mile in fog patches and showers early Friday, but improving to greater than 6 miles on Friday.
Hello everyone, it's been a little while since I've been in front of the camera, so hello to you all. I'm going to be doing a new series and this is called Spiritual Chat, and what I'm going to be looking at doing is talking about different spiritual topics. So if there is something that you're wanting me to discuss, please leave a comment below because I will add that to my discussion list. Today I am going to be talking about spiritual awakenings. However, before we get into it, I do have a couple of things I'd like to announce and also to say as well. The first thing is, at the time of recording this, my channel has now surpassed the 200 subscriber mark. So thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed, I can't talk, to the channel, and to those of you who have been here since the beginning, thank you very much. It means a lot to me that people are enjoying the content that I'm creating, and that I am able to help as many people as possible, which was the purpose of me creating this channel. Now, the next thing I want to announce is actually an exciting project that I've been working on for a little while, and that is I am creating my own oracle deck. And I'm in the process now of doing the finalized stages of the design, and once that's ready I will be releasing that as well. So stay tuned, I will be keeping you up to date on this. I'm hoping within a couple of weeks to a month maximum I'll have that up and running and ready to go. So I'm really excited. It's something that I'm using my own photography with, and using my own intuition as well. So this deck is a love style deck, very focused on the twin flame journey. And after this one I do have some other projects that I want to work on as well in terms of decks, so I'm super excited to be able to release this to you guys. So stay tuned, I'll keep you up to date with the process. Okay, so let's get into it. If you do see me looking down, it's just because I have all my notes written down here. I tend to talk a lot, so if I don't have notes to refer to, then I'm going to go completely off topic and talk for too long and take up too much of your time, and I really don't want to do that because your time is valuable. So the spiritual awakening process is very unique to each individual, and the reason why I wanted to discuss this and do my own video on this is because I want to try and remove the negative connotations that can come from it, because a lot of people in the spiritual community, you've probably experienced this yourself, can make it seem like the spiritual awakening process is like a badge of honor, or that it makes them higher than another person. It's a lot of negativity in terms of saying that other people are awake, that other people aren't awake, and that they're not as high on the spiritual journey as those who are awakened. I also want to explain how the process can be so different for so many people. I'm going to use the main examples of how a lot of people experience the awakening process, but I do want to say, please take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because what resonates for me isn't going to always resonate for everyone else, and do your own research on it as well. This is really just my way of explaining my opinion on how the spiritual awakening process works, and my own experiences and the experiences that I've had working with clients as well. Okay, so I guess the first question is, what is the spiritual awakening? And the spiritual awakening is essentially when we're no longer in that dream world that we experience. It's waking up to the ego, the presence of the ego, and asking those questions in life, like, who am I? Why am I here? What is the meaning of all of this? It's those difficult questions. So when you start asking those questions of yourself, and when you start experiencing this feeling of needing more, that's when you're generally going through a spiritual awakening. I do want to point out that this can seem like a very abrupt thing for some people, and then for other people it's not. It's a slow process that happens over time, sometimes over many years, and they don't even realize that they're experiencing it, whereas for other people it can happen very dramatically. Some people may refer to this spiritual awakening process as enlightenment. I choose not to refer to it as that because I see enlightenment as something very different to a spiritual awakening. But on that note as well, you might often see a lot of people who refer to the spiritually awakened as those who are seemingly spiritually perfect, and this can be like the Buddha, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Mary, all of these kind of figures, even Jesus. We're looking at these figures that people see as being spiritually perfect, that they are full of divine love and divine wisdom, and they've gone through that spiritual growth. Because this is really referring to enlightenment, this is why I want to refer to it slightly different. So to me, because I don't refer to spiritually awakened as being enlightened, I want to sort of point out that you don't need to be perfect to be awakened. There's some good examples of famous celebrities that you could say are spiritually awakened, but also see the flaws are people like Oprah Winfrey, for example, Jim Carrey, Russell Brand. These are people who are asking those big questions of who they are, their purpose in the world. They're seeking knowledge and enlightenment, but at the same time they also have flaws still. They still have insecurities, they still have problems in the world. So to be spiritually awakened does not mean that you're spiritually perfect. It just means that you are awake to the concept of the ego. You're awake to the concept of the I, which is the I am, instead of the we, instead of the collective energy. For those who go through the dramatic process of the spiritual awakening, it can be quite an alienating path. You can feel quite lonely, you can feel very lost and distraught. You might have a lot of relationship problems, especially to those people around you who don't understand the journey that you're going on. But even though it is quite a hard path and a hard road to walk, it's actually one of the most rewarding ones that you can experience as well. So essentially what's happening when you go through the spiritually awakening process is you're seeing through the illusions that are around you. You're seeing through the materialistic aspects and understanding that chasing after the materialistic dreams, desires and this kind of thing that we all have as society is actually not going to lead to fulfillment. Now, this is not to say that you can't have a desire to have new things or to have materialistic aspects in your life. It doesn't mean you have to Marie Kondo your whole life and get rid of everything and live a minimalist lifestyle. It's just understanding that fulfillment doesn't come from external, it comes from the internal. So you often begin to question your belief systems, you begin to question what you have been taught, who you are as a person, especially for those who are coming from very traditional religious backgrounds from their family. This is a really big struggle for a lot of people because you may not find that belief system that you have resonates for you anymore. It's really going through the conditioning that we've been taught since we were children. And this is why we ask those big questions of why am I here? Why do bad things happen to good people? What is the purpose of all of this? I want to quickly just go to the energy of those who experience this on a slower timeline. So for myself, for example, I don't have the ability to relate to the dramatic spiritual awakening. I was lucky enough that I have been on this path since I was a child. I've been around the spiritual energy since I was a child, so it wasn't a very dramatic thing. It was kind of like a shift in perspective and a shift in awareness for me that was really like epiphanies that happened. It wasn't a dramatic wake-up call. For other people though, and the more common way of the spiritual awakening process happening actually comes through a lot of trauma. So a lot of people experience it after dramatic breakups in their life or near-death experiences, for example, or even just a complete shake-up of your foundations. If you work with the tarot, for example, this would be what we would call one of those tower moments where your complete foundations are shaken up and ripped out from underneath you. You might lose your job, your relationships, family ties, friendships, your whole entire world can be shaken up and leave you feeling extremely raw and vulnerable and like you are alone in the world. And it doesn't mean it has to happen in exactly those ways, but it's that emotional feeling of being alone, and your entire world being stripped apart and down to the bare bones and the essentials. This is a lot of the time what happens to people on the spiritual awakening path. Now, one of the other things I want to point out too is the concept of being awake and unawake is a very interesting concept, and being enlightened or higher up than another person. And the reason why this is an interesting concept is because essentially the spiritual awakening process is just relearning what we already know. To be unawake, or before we go through this process, it's really just we're closed off to that side of ourselves. We're closed off to the divinity within ourselves. We're closed off to the connection that we have with everything all around us. And once we go through that process of awakening, it's not like we're learning new information. The information is already there within us. And the information is just coming to the surface, which is why we are going through this awakening. We're awakening to what's already internally within. Now, as I have mentioned before, this is a term that it can be quite hard to pinpoint exactly what a spiritual awakening is, because it is so different for different people. Depending on the communities that you're involved in, there is going to be so many different versions of what a spiritual awakening is, what it means, whether or not it's enlightenment, whether or not it's nirvana, whether or not it's ascension, whatever terms that are going to appear. It's very hard to pinpoint it. And this is why I do say to be very vigilant in your research once you start going through this process. If you believe that you're going through a level of awakening, take what everyone says with a grain of salt. Never take it to heart. If it doesn't sit right with you, if what someone says to you makes you feel uncomfortable, or it just makes you go, no, that's not right for me, then that's the truth. Your soul, yourself knows the truth. Another thing I want to talk about is the misconception that there is only one stage of spiritual awakening. Now, for those who have been on the spiritual path for quite some time, you will know this isn't the case. For those who are new to the spiritual path, and perhaps you found this video because you're just going through the process of spiritual awakening and trying to understand a little bit more, there is multiple layers and levels of spiritual awakening. So the first one is literally going to open you up to the world of spirituality, and to the big questions in life, and to rediscover who you are. And the way I explain spiritual awakenings is it's like looking at a game. When we go through a game, we go through levels, and at each level there's like a boss that you have to challenge and you have to fight and defeat before you can go through to the next level. Spiritual awakenings is very similar to that. We have the first awakening, then it sort of plateaus for a little while. We get settled into that energy. We learn a lot of things. We take in information until we're quite comfortable on that journey. And then all of a sudden something else will happen that will trigger another layer of awakening, so we can get to the next level, the next depth. And this is a continuous process. It's a never-ending process. It's all about that real need for humanity to continuously evolve and learn. It's part of the life journey of going through this process of learning new knowledge, of going through wisdom, of going through the ascension process. And that's what spiritual awakening is to me, and why we experience so many different levels. So don't be fooled by thinking you've gone through it once, you're never going to go through it again, because life will knock you down and it will kick you onto your ass, and you'll be forced to go through more awakenings. The further along your path you get, the harder these are going to be as well. It's like in the game, the higher up you go in the levels, the harder the bosses are, because you are more prepared for it. You've got more knowledge, more wisdom, and you're accessing deeper aspects of yourself, of knowledge, of inner wisdom. So it's going to get harder, and because you're also going deeper internally, you're going to find more wounds. And this is where shadow work comes in. I'm not going to discuss shadow work in this video, but it does need its own video, and I will discuss shadow work in depth, because it's a very misunderstood concept, and it's something that I absolutely love working with, shadow work, and understanding the shadow self and what it means. but this is what the process of spiritual awakening is going to draw out: the shadow self, the ego, and trauma, and healing the trauma. So essentially, to wrap it up in a nutshell, the spiritual awakening process is just awakening to the knowledge within. It's awakening to a different depth of spirituality or existence for yourself, and asking the bigger questions in life. As I said, it's going to be something slightly different to everyone, but this is my interpretation of what the spiritual awakening process is. It's stripping you down to the bare bones and the raw essentials within yourself, so you can rebuild who you are on a soul level and who you truly are meant to be. So I do hope this has helped you understand the spiritual awakening process a little bit more. I am going to do another video on the symptoms that you may experience going through a spiritual awakening, and how to manage those, and how to identify them as well. So thank you very much for taking your time out of your day to watch this video. If you have any questions that you would like me to address in the next video that I do on spiritual awakening, please leave them in the comments below and I will get to those. If there is a topic that you would like me to discuss in this series, which I am going to call Spiritual Chat, please put that in the comment below as well. I'm hoping to upload these videos at minimum once a month. As you will see, my channel is very focused around a lot of readings and that kind of thing. But I may do it a little bit more often, but once a month is roughly what I'm aiming for this spiritual conversation at this point in time. So thank you again for watching, everyone. I'm sending you lots of love and light. Have a great day. Bye.